Antoine Semenyo is a name that's been making the headlines again, and the biggest of those storylines today is Manchester City pushing to complete a deal for the Bournemouth forward, and the Etihad is set to be his preferred destination.
16 Premier League games, 8 goals, 3 assists, over 100 duels won from the wing. Antoine Semenyo isn't on a hot streak. He's rewriting what Bournemouth can do from wide areas. An XG of 5.36 means he's earning these goals, not stumbling into them. 77 touches in the opposition box, that's where he lives. And those 40 aerial duels, 25 tackles, 60 dribbles attempted, that's not winger behavior. That's a forward who defends like he's got something to prove. This is pressure football in a number 7 shirt. And here's what should make everyone else nervous. Manchester City don't chase headlines, they chase solutions. Guardiola doesn't buy wingers to look pretty in possession. He buys them to crack the hard games, the ones where space vanishes, legs tire, and you need someone who can bulldoze through structure when flair won't cut it. They've already felt Semenyo up close. They've seen what happens when he turns clearances into attacks, contact into forward momentum, and wide battles into penalties, fouls, or chaos. So when his name starts floating around the Etihad, it's not about potential, it's about what he can do now. Because if City move for Semenyo, the signing itself won't be the scary part. It'll be what he gives them in March and April, when games tighten, when one moment decides a title race, and when City suddenly have another way to break you down. That's the part nobody's talking about yet. Before Semenyo ever became a Premier League problem, he was a name most academies had already crossed out. Born in London on the 7th of January 2000, Antoine Semenyo grew up in an environment where football wasn't a fantasy. It was normal. His father played professionally in Ghana. The game was part of the household rhythm, but talent alone didn't open doors for him the way it does for some. In fact, the first phase of Semenyo's story is rejection. Arsenal, Tottenham, Millwall, Crystal Palace. Trials came and went, none stuck. At 15, after an 8-week trial, Palace let him go. For most players, that's the quiet end of the road. Semenyo seriously considered walking away from football altogether. That's the first thing that matters about him. He didn't come through a system designed to protect him. Instead, he rebuilt his route through education football at South Gloucestershire and Stroud College, where Dave Hockaday convinced him not to quit. From there, Bristol City took a chance. Not on a finished product, but on raw physical tools and mentality. At Bristol City, Semenyo wasn't polished. He wasn't even clearly defined. He arrived as a striker, got pushed wide, then learned to survive anywhere across the front line. Loans followed. Not glamorous ones, but necessary ones. At Bath City, he learned senior football hurts. 6 goals in 16 games wasn't about numbers. It was about contact, timing, and learning how to stay upright when defenders don't care about development plans. At Newport County, his position changed permanently. He stopped being a center forward and became something more flexible. A wide attacker who could run, press, and carry. He played every type of match. FA Cup nights, ugly league games, physical battles against bigger sides. He even played 90 minutes as Newport knocked Leicester City out of the FA Cup. That mattered more than it looked at the time. Then came Sunderland. Fewer minutes, no goals. A reminder that progress isn't linear. Back at Bristol City, the work finally started to show. By 2020/21, he played 50 competitive matches in a season, not as a star, as a solution. He assisted, pressed, carried, and gradually added end product. 5 goals, 7 assists, then 8 goals and 12 assists the following season. By January 2022, he was Championship Player of the Month. This wasn't hype, it was accumulation. The key shift was identity. Semenyo stopped trying to be elegant. He leaned into what he actually was. Powerful, vertical, relentless. A winger who didn't float, he collided. A wide player who treated duels like invitations, not risks. When AFC Bournemouth signed him in January 2023 for around £10 million, they weren't buying numbers. They were buying a profile that survives Premier League contact. And that's important context, because nothing about Semenyo's rise suggests fragility. He wasn't fast-tracked. He wasn't insulated. He didn't come from a super academy where mistakes get hidden. He came up through rejection, positional uncertainty, loan spells that didn't flatter him, and environments where you either adapt or disappear. By the time he reached the Premier League properly, he wasn't learning how to cope. He already knew. That background explains everything that comes next. The pressing, the duels, the goals that arrive from chaos rather than choreography. It explains why his game scales up instead of breaking down, and it explains why certain clubs, the ones obsessed with control under stress, are paying attention now. Because players who arrive this way tend to understand something early. Football isn't about looking comfortable, it's about staying functional when it isn't. And Semenyo learned that lesson long before anyone started linking him to Manchester City. When AFC Bournemouth signed Antoine Semenyo, they didn't try to soften him, they sharpened him. Under Andoni Iraola, Bournemouth became one of the most uncomfortable teams in the league to play against. Not because they dominate the ball, but because they dominate the moment you lose it. Iraola ball is about stress, immediate pressure, short recovery distances, turning loose touches into transition chances before the opponent has time to reorganize. Semenyo fits that logic perfectly, and not in a vague energy winger sense. He isn't pressing for show, he's pressing to collapse lanes. Watch Bournemouth out of possession and you'll notice a pattern. The press isn't designed to win the ball cleanly every time. It's designed to force hurried decisions, heavy first touches, sideways passes that arrive a half-second late. That's where Semenyo becomes dangerous. At 6 feet 1 inch, powerful through the hips and shoulders, he can sprint into contact and stay balanced. That matters. Many wide players press fast but bounce off. Semenyo presses through defenders. When the ball spills, he's already moving forward, not resetting his feet. That's how chaos becomes organized. In possession, Bournemouth don't ask him to slow the game down. They ask him to break it open. His role is vertical by design. When the ball arrives on his side, the instruction isn't to recycle, it's to carry, commit, and collapse the defensive shape. This season alone, his numbers underline the point. In just 16 league appearances, he's already produced 8 goals and 3 assists. His XG sits at 5.36, not inflated but earned. While his touches in the opposition box, 77, tell you Bournemouth aren't using him as a touchline ornament. He's arriving where damage happens. More importantly, the physical output backs it up. Over 100 duels won, 40 aerials claimed, 60 dribbles attempted, not to entertain but to move the block backward. This isn't flair football. It's force applied at speed. That's why Bournemouth's transitions feel so violent. When they regain the ball, they don't fan out. They surge forward. Semenyo becomes the outlet that turns defense into attack in one movement. He can receive with a defender already leaning into him, roll the contact, and still carry the ball 20 yards into space. That's rare, and this is where the conversation quietly shifts. Because the skill Bournemouth are extracting from Semenyo isn't just productivity, it's reliability under pressure. He offers vertical threat without tactical gambling. He doesn't abandon structure to chase moments. He runs hard when the team needs an exit. He tracks back without being prompted. He can play either wing, drift inside as a second striker, or act as a release valve when Bournemouth are pinned deep. That role flexibility matters. Against teams that press high, he becomes the long outlet. Against teams that sit, he attacks the half space and crashes the box. Against teams that try to overload wide areas, he drags defenders inside and creates space for runners beyond him. This is the part people miss when they look at his goals. City don't just buy output, they buy control inside chaos. Semenyo's defensive work rate, 25 tackles this season, multiple recoveries in the defensive third, isn't extra credit. It's part of the profile. Pep Guardiola's wide players don't get exempted from structure. They're expected to press, cover passing lanes, and recover position without breaking shape. Semenyo already does that, in a far less forgiving system. What Bournemouth have done, intentionally or not, is strip away the noise. They've taken a raw, powerful attacker and taught him when to explode and when to hold, when to sprint and when to pin, when to attack space and when to protect it. That's why he doesn't look chaotic anymore. He looks purposeful, and that's why, if you're watching closely, the interest from Manchester City makes sense long before any bid ever lands. Because the scary part isn't that Semenyo scores goals, it's that he already plays like someone trusted to break games without breaking systems. If Pep Guardiola wanted highlights, he would sign dribblers. If he wanted noise, he would sign stars. He doesn't. Pep signs functions. That's the first mistake people make when they hear Manchester City linked with Antoine Semenyo. They frame it as an aesthetic choice, a power winger, a chaos player, something different. In reality, it's the opposite. This is about control. Specifically, control inside chaos. Guardiola's wide players aren't there to hug the touchline or rack up take-ons for fun. They exist to solve very specific problems that that appear in different phases of a match. Sometimes the problem is a low block. Sometimes it's an aggressive press. Sometimes it's a game state where City are ahead and need to keep opponents pinned without overcommitting. Semenyo fits that logic cleanly. Start with the most important Guardiola principle, positional reliability. City's wingers are not free agents. They hold width to stretch the back line, but they also act as pressure valves. When City are trapped, the winger must be able to receive under contact, protect the ball, and either progress it or win a foul. That's not optional, it's structural. This is where Semenyo stands out. At Bournemouth, he already does the hardest version of this job. He receives with defenders tight, he absorbs contact, he stays upright. His duel numbers this season, over 100 duels won, 40 aerials claimed, aren't winger fluff, they're survival data. It means he doesn't lose the ball when the game turns physical. In a Guardiola side, that translates directly into territorial dominance. City don't just want to attack you, they want to lock you in. A winger who can pin a fullback, resist pressure, and still move the ball forward allows City to recycle possession higher up the pitch. It keeps the opponent defending instead of countering. Semenyo's ball carrying under contact does exactly that, without needing risky passes. That's why this isn't a replacement conversation. He doesn't replace Jeremy Doku. Doku is City's destabilizer. He stretches teams horizontally, forces double teams, breaks defensive timing with raw acceleration. Semenyo does something different. He compresses teams vertically. Where Doku isolates, Semenyo advances. Where Doku creates separation with speed, Semenyo creates advantage with strength and timing. One pulls defenders wide, the other drives them backwards. Used together, they create stress in two directions, which is exactly how Guardiola likes to attack. The same applies to Phil Foden. Foden operates best when he can drift, combine, and arrive late in the box. That freedom depends on someone else holding the width or occupying defenders physically. Semenyo can do that without demanding touches. He doesn't need to be the conductor, he's the enabler. Then there's the defensive side, the part that usually decides Pep signings. Guardiola's wingers must defend angles, not just players. They close passing lanes, delay fullbacks, and funnel play into traps where midfielders like Rodri can step in and take control. Semenyo already understands this. His pressing isn't reckless. He doesn't sprint past the ball. He approaches on a curve, blocks the inside lane, and forces play wide. That's Guardiola school, and he's learned it in a far less structured environment. At City, that work becomes cleaner, shorter, more coordinated. Another key factor, vertical threat without tactical gambling. City have spent years balancing risk. They want penetration, but not turnovers that expose their rest defense. Many explosive wingers fail here. They beat one man, lose the ball, and suddenly the entire structure is compromised. Semenyo doesn't play like that. His decision-making is aggressive, but not impulsive. His XG of 5.36 against 8 goals this season tells you he takes shots early and decisively, not speculative ones. He attacks the box with purpose. He doesn't float on the edge, waiting for second balls. He arrives. That matters in Guardiola's late-game management. When City are 1-0 up and the opponent starts opening up, Pep doesn't want chaos. He wants controlled threat, someone who can run channels, occupy defenders, win fouls, and still punish mistakes. That is Semenyo's profile. He can play either wing. He can operate as a second striker in transition. He can act as a hard-running outlet when City want to rest with the ball higher up the pitch. And crucially, he can do all of this without demanding that the team change shape around him. That's the real signal. Guardiola rarely buys players who force adaptation. He buys players who enhance existing systems. Semenyo enhances City's ability to win uncomfortable matches. The away games, the physical games, the late season fixtures where legs are heavy and margins are thin. He gives City a way to keep pressure without chasing perfection. So if and when this deal happens, it won't be framed as a headline signing. It will look quiet, functional, almost boring. And that's exactly how Guardiola likes it. Because the scariest City signings are never about excitement. They're about removing one more way for opponents to breathe. Here's the part that usually gets missed. If Manchester City do get this deal done, it won't land like a blockbuster. There won't be shock, no dramatic unveiling, no sense that the league has just changed overnight. It will look tidy, a strong, physical, wide player, good age profile, Premier League proven, another name added to an already stacked squad. And that's exactly why it's dangerous, because Pep Guardiola doesn't build teams for August, he builds them for March. That's when the league changes texture, games stop being open, space disappears, opponents stop pressing high and start surviving low, margins shrink, touches become heavier, second balls decide points. That's where profiles like Semenyo start to matter, not because they dominate games, but because they end resistance. a winger who can carry through contact when legs are gone, an outlet who can hold territory when the crowd is restless, a forward who doesn't need the game to be open to hurt you. Those players don't trend in September, they decide titles in April. So if this move happens, don't judge it by the announcement graphic, don't judge it by the first month, don't even judge it by the numbers. Judge it by the moment when City are protecting a 1-goal lead away from home. The opponent is fading, and there's no obvious way out, because if City still have a way through you, then that's when it becomes scary, and by the time everyone notices, the damage is usually already done.